Welcome to Not Just Money with your hosts, Doretta and Li. This isn't your typical podcast about finances. It's a podcast about all the money conversations we aren't having, sometimes not even with ourselves. Join us on this journey of hard truths, lived experience, and the wisdom that comes from both. Because money is never just about money.
Hey Lee, so some big news last week on an issue we've referred to, but not yet done a deep dive on.
Yep, surveillance pricing. Now, we've mentioned it a few times as a very disturbing trend and promised a deep dive. And now, Toronto's Mayor, Olivia Chow, is on record looking to ban surveillance pricing specifically on groceries. So today, we are going to deliver on our surveillance pricing promise.
So why don't we start with what Olivia's actually seeking to do?
Okay, so last week she introduced a motion to ban surveillance pricing for groceries and other essentials. What she said was, no one should have a different price based on who you are. That's just not fair. The motion passed the executive committee and will go to the full Toronto City Council this week. Actually, full disclosure, we are recording this episode on Tuesday, so by the time our lovely listeners hear this, that vote would have happened. The plan is that if it's approved by City Council, the City of Toronto will then prepare a report for early next year on how to implement the ban.
So to be clear, all the major grocery store chains have denied using surveillance pricing, and there is absolutely no evidence that they are. And it's also not really known exactly what the city of Toronto can do to actually implement a ban like that, especially since the provincial government has the power to overturn municipal bylaws. And Ontario's Conservative Premier has made it clear that he's all for surveillance pricing
Boo.
because it's part
Boo.
of a capitalist free stop it. Because it's part of a capitalist free market and competition to control costs.
Uh-huh. And okay, let's not get political or anything, but just so we are clear, I have many thoughts, and we know fairness is an important value for me. This whole free market and competition nonsense is total garbage. You cannot have free markets when there are so few competitors. That's not how that works. This is why you should definitely have a standard level of education before you seek public office. Sorry, not sorry. I said it. We're all thinking it.
Dear, no, we're not being political at all. But no matter who you support, it's a really good time to put the issue on the table, and the Toronto mayor has done just that, and let's give it a cold, hard look. So let's talk surveillance pricing.
Yeah, and let's start with what it is and what it isn't.
So there are two kind of new key pricing strategies that companies use that are algorithmic, they're highly data dependent, and with the addition of AI algorithms, are becoming absolutely mind-bendingly powerful. So the two are dynamic pricing and surveillance pricing. Not the same thing, but people confuse them. And I think if we're going to have a really insightful conversation, we need to distinguish between them. They're related, not the same thing. The distinction matters hugely.
Okay, so let's distinguish. And why don't we start with dynamic pricing first?
So the Canadian Competition Bureau defines dynamic pricing as algorithmic pricing that's based on market conditions. So that means like supply, demand, inventory, competitors, time, weather, local events. So let's unpack that. Basically, it means that with dynamic pricing, the prices change according to changing market conditions, and it can happen crazy fast when you're using AI-driven algorithms. But the business is essentially asking, given what is happening in the market right now, what price makes sense?
So let's maybe use an example. I think that might help in this context. So let's consider how that plays out in an example. Now, imagine a hotel room. Now, the situation is a quiet Tuesday in February, and I'm just going to make this up. The price could be $140. Then we go into Friday night. Well, now there's more demand. So now we're looking at a higher price, let's say $210. Now there's a major concert in town or concerts in town. So there's a lot more people who are visiting and need hotel rooms. That price then goes to $325. Or it's almost sold out, the whole hotel. So now you're looking at pricing of $390 comparatively to that quiet Tuesday in February. But here's the thing with dynamic pricing. Basically, everyone searching at a particular moment in time will be offered the same algorithmically determined price. That is pure dynamic pricing. So if both Doretta and I are searching for a Friday night, we will both be given $210 as the rate.
Right. And that assumes that we're both looking at the same site, right? Because there are all kinds of
Yes.
other things that can affect that, right? But if we're just going to look at pure dynamic pricing, that's right. And that price can change a lot and super fast, but the changes are being driven by market conditions, i.e., not by you.
Right, which is the difference from surveillance pricing.
Because surveillance pricing, also known as personalized pricing, isn't that warm and fuzzy, isn't using market information or just market information to determine the price. It's using information about you as an individual and how that compares to people with your profile. So dynamic pricing is asking, what's the market willing to pay? Surveillance pricing asks, what's this particular kind of person willing to pay?
I think surveillance pricing is a better term than personal. If it looks like a duck, quack, quack, quack.
Exactly. Yep, yep. I mean, the use of the word surveillance is not accidental because the concern is not just about the fact that the prices are changing. The concern is that the company is actually watching you to determine your price.
Yeah, the information surveillance pricing algorithms use gets really personal, really granular. They can include things like your browsing history, previous purchases, location, demographics, the device that you're using, shopping patterns, searches, what you put in or remove from your cart, how frequently you visit a website, what you have clicked, and potentially other data about your online activities that they purchased from third parties.
Yeah, we give away so much information about ourselves without even realizing it. And that information becomes data, and that data has a dollar value that companies and their AI algorithms can exploit. So take those intermediaries that they can purchase data from. In the US, the Federal Trade Commission has found them using shockingly specific information, including not just your location and your browsing history, but your actual mouse movements and
Wow.
abandoned shopping carts. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these algorithms probably know more about you than you do.
Yeah. I think it's personal aspect of it that is the scariest. I mean, think about it this way. You're shopping online for a $200 product. A conventional retailer sets the price at $200. A dynamic pricing system might decide that because their inventory is low and demand is high, they'll raise the price to $220. But the surveillance pricing system will go a lot further than that. They can create an estimated willingness to pay score that's just for you. So, say you usually comparison shop, they would know that you're likely only willing to pay $180. But your sister generally makes really fast purchase decisions and never comparison shops. So she might be more likely to be willing to pay $230. And then there's your BFF. They visited the product site 7 times. So the algorithm may determine that this information combined with other data points means they may be willing to pay $250. I'm making up the numbers, but you get the point.
So, what the algorithm's basically trying to determine isn't the price of the item, it's what is the highest price this particular customer is likely to accept.
Exactly. And that's why surveillance pricing is sometimes described as price discrimination at an enormous scale. So, what the Canadian Competition Bureau zeroes in on is that detailed consumer data makes it possible for companies to estimate a person's maximum willingness to pay and potentially charge different consumers different prices for the same product.
Seriously, scary. How did we even get here? These geniuses should spend their time better. Maybe cure cancer, save baby kittens. I don't know.
But since you asked,
I, I hear it. It's in your voice. I'm assuming you've already looked into this and you have the answer, and we're just going to enter another rabbit hole, aren't we?
just a little one. Brief history of pricing strategies. And honestly, it's really interesting, trust me.
Uh huh.
Seriously, there is nothing new about charging different people different prices. Sellers have been trying to figure it out for centuries. What's new is the surveillance machinery. I mean, think about it. Sellers have always taken into account things like someone's clothing, urgency, their accent, questions, and behavior to figure out what someone can actually afford. I mean, think about hotels again, right?
Yeah, or even maybe even open markets where they give you a verbal price and it's probably different for each customer, especially if they expected you to haggle. And for
Yeah.
hotels, there are just so many different types of rates.
Yeah, exactly. So economists call this price discrimination. There's nothing inherently sinister about it. I mean, think student and senior fares or family memberships, they can actually expand access. I think even airlines still offer bereavement fares for the death or imminent death of a family member. So, in that case, that kind of personalized pricing is actually getting you a lower price. The important difference today is that digital systems can potentially do this continuously and at a surprisingly precise individual scale. So think about dynamic pricing, and remember that's the pricing that varies based on market conditions. That really started in a major way with airlines. So, in the beginning, back in the dark ages, passenger airlines originally had really rigid, regulated fare structures. They got deregulated in the late 70s in the US and the late 80s in Canada. And they began to develop sophisticated revenue management systems that were based on the idea of selling the right seat to the right customer at the right price at the right time. And the variables would be things like how many seats were left, how close it was to departure, business versus leisure travelers, the season, the competition, how close the departure date was, all that kind of stuff.
So is that how you used to travel, Doretta?
Yeah, actually, I remember those days.
So is that kind of the, I don't know, the ancestor of a lot of the algorithmic pricing we see today?
Absolutely. But things started going really crazy with the internet. I mean, changing prices used to be fairly complicated because think about it, especially if you're selling, products, touchy things you can touch and feel, right? You might have to print a new catalog, change signs, change all the shelf tags, tell all your staff, all of that stuff. But online, it's easy peasy. You change one number in a database, poof, it's all done.
So that's when we start to see price experimentation, purchase rates at different price points, and that feeds that algorithm.
Yeah, exactly. The origins of the highly automated pricing system.
Well, I have to say, it's not foolproof. It's pretty annoying when I go to the grocery store and the cash register isn't recognizing a posted sale price.
Yesterday, not to me, but the two people ahead of me in the 8 items or less line, both of them had peaches, and the register was charging $1 more than the posted sale sign. They were not happy to have to go to the customer service desk to get their dollar back.
I don't blame them. It's a terrible experience.
I don't blame them either. But anyway, next step towards surveillance pricing, think Uber, surge pricing.
So annoying. If you're a regular user, I imagine it makes it hard to budget when the price changes day to day, hour by hour.
Ride sharing really put the spotlight on dynamic pricing in everyday life. So think about it like this. There are 100 people who suddenly request rides after a concert. there are only 20 drivers nearby.
Yeah, that's why pro tip, never rely on Uber after a concert. Okay, but the algorithm raises the price, which in principle at least discourages some riders, encourages more drivers to enter the area, and allocates scarce rides to people willing to pay more, and it increases revenue for the drivers and the company.
Exactly. But it's still dynamic pricing because the trigger is primarily the changing market. And research on ride sharing describes surge pricing that way, balancing fluctuating supply and demand across time and geography. But then, drum roll,
Do 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 do
then
do do do
comes
do.
AI.
That's right. That was my drum roll. It's not very good. Okay.
Um, okay, its ability to combine huge numbers of variables. So all of a sudden, a retailer can feed their system not just product plus time plus market conditions plus inventory plus competitors, but also highly personal information like this person's online behavior to figure out what's the probable maximum price this person will pay. So actually, it's about prediction.
Oh, there's a different segue. Hmm. Uh, I wonder if that's why my Uber rides are always cheaper than my husband's. Now, we always open our apps together to see who has the cheapest ride when we're going somewhere together. The algorithm doesn't need to understand you as a human being, it just needs to predict your behavior. So it might not know Doretta really wants this, or Lee will not pay for more for a ride. It's enough for it to know Doretta's browsing pattern looks like this. People with this browsing pattern or this spending pattern, location, device, and purchasing history are 72% more likely to buy at $184 and only 39% likely to buy at $205. Right?
Got it. So here we are, the new frontier of surveillance pricing. And honestly, it has the potential to completely change what we think of as commerce.
What do you mean?
Well, so think about it like this: with traditional commerce, you got a product or a service, a price, and the customer decides, right? But with surveillance pricing, it's more like you got a product or a service, and you have a customer, and the customer is surveilled. And their patterns are predicted. So you get an individual price and then the customer decides. So the customer, with all their habits and behaviors and online activity, kind of becomes part of the pricing mechanism. And the customer may not even know what information the retailer used to come up with that price for them.
I don't think companies are using either dynamic or surveillance pricing. They have at least the potential to do both.
Not just both, though. They have the potential to do both at the same time and then layer in a pile of other pricing strategies like shrinkflation, drip pricing, when the advertised price doesn't include everything you have to pay. Yes.
Ah, yes. Favorite strategy of the discount airline.
Happened to me on my trip to Winnipeg a couple weeks ago. Carry on airport tax and seat selection cost me more than my plane ticket. Never again.
I like how airport tax was a variable in that. I don't know if, I mean, what would happen if you said, I'm going to decline that? Anyways, okay, sorry, I digress. So, now that we've explored what surveillance pricing is, what about regulation? Can it be banned, as the city of Toronto is trying to look at? I don't know, regulated? Is the mayor onto something?
Well, it's actually being looked at in a lot of jurisdictions, but right now Canada has no laws against it. What Canada regulates is the data that can be used for surveillance pricing more than surveillance pricing itself. So it's actually unlawful now if the company is collecting or using data without proper consent, for example. But there really are different legal frameworks that are definitely interested in what might happen and that can apply to controlling surveillance pricing.
Such as?
The Competition Bureau's been looking hard at algorithmic pricing and, just to remind everybody, distinguishing carefully between the two kinds, dynamic and surveillance. And they released a discussion paper last year. We'll include a link to it in the description. I think it's really interesting. But I think big picture, you're looking at frameworks like competition law, rules around deceptive marketing, consumer protection laws, and even sector-specific regulation. But the big one, I think, is privacy law. That's what I'm watching for, because if companies collect information about you, the issue isn't just can they use AI? It's more, what are they allowed to collect and what are they allowed to use this personal information for? And I suspect that that's where we're going to see the next laws, the next regulation coming in. They're going to focus on transparency, consent, and limits on how companies can use personal data to determine what each individual pays.
Hmm.
When you think about it, it's really funny. We used to think of privacy as a civil rights issue, but it's actually becoming a money issue too. So
Wow.
information about you has a financial value. It's not necessarily bad or exploitive. I mean, take loyalty cards, for example. You are giving those companies permission, for example, to use your personal information to give you personalized coupons. But the question is, what else do they have permission for? Do they automatically have permission to use that information to determine the maximum price you might personally be willing to pay?
Ooh, that's pretty freaky. Okay, that's a lot of information, and I agree. The history of how we got here was very interesting. Let's call it not just money approved. But I think what we really need to do is explore the implications of this information, how to protect ourselves and make sure we're making good purchase decisions. Okay, so I'll start. I'd say when you're shopping online for whatever product or service, do not assume that the first price you see is the best price. I mean, that's just good sense. It used to be that a price tag was the price tag, the same for everyone. But with surveillance pricing, the first price you see may be based partly on what a company thinks you're willing to pay. Compare another retailer or check a price comparison site. Ask yourself, is this the market price? Is this a personalized offer? Could someone else be seeing something different? And maybe even treat it as an anchor price so you can get a sense and then continue to shop and evaluate before buying.
Check the prices on different devices or even with a different person like you and your husband. But check it with your phone, check it with your laptop. Use different browsers. If the prices are different, investigate why. It might help sometimes, but it would also be on the same IP address.
Yeah. And I would add to that, compare before you identify yourself, especially if you're shopping for something major. Go incognito or open a private browsing window or just don't sign in to the app or the store if you're a frequent shopper. That will limit how much info gets stored during that session. It won't hide your identity from every website, especially if you've previously logged in and there's a cookie, there's that whole thing. But it can help reduce some tracking and reduce some personalization. Or maybe it's time for a VPN.
I think in general, it's a good idea to practice some online hygiene, like clearing out cookies, turning off unnecessary tracking, and limit unnecessary data sharing. I think it's a good idea to review things like your app permissions, location access, cookies, and account settings kind of on a regular basis. You don't have to eliminate every form of tracking, but what you should focus on is the information that isn't really necessary for the specific product or service you're interested in.
That includes loyalty programs because that is a pricing strategy that results in different prices for different people. The member price isn't necessarily surveillance pricing, it may simply be a discount offered to everyone who belongs to the program. But make sure you understand what each loyalty program is actually giving you. The question you have to ask yourself is, what information am I giving up in exchange for this discount? Remember what we said about the value of your personal information. Make sure that the benefits of the program justify the data you're giving away.
Another thing I would say is don't rush. And again, this is kind of like good advice, generally speaking, when you're shopping. But the algorithms can sometimes detect urgency. Like if you're repeatedly searching for the same flight or the same hotel, the actual evidence on how this affects pricing is kind of mixed, but it's generally better to compare and to avoid panic purchasing.
Finally, I would say be really cautious when you're emotionally committed to a purchase. This is where surveillance pricing meets money psychology. Once you've spent an hour planning a trip, shopping for a wedding dress, or searching for a flight, you're more likely to feel that you have to buy it. That's when you really need to flex your comparison shopping muscles.
Before we wrap up, I do want to add that while it's important to be aware of surveillance pricing and take reasonably necessary steps to protect yourself, don't get paranoid about surveillance pricing. Think about the grocery store thing right now. At least in Canada, none of the chains are doing it. They've all stated it clearly. There's no evidence to the contrary. And it's really easy to confuse other pricing strategies like dynamic pricing or personalized marketing with surveillance pricing. So, just because you suddenly see an ad for shoes you searched for does not mean that company has raised the shoe's price for you because you looked at it. Advertising, recommendations, promotions, individual pricing, they're all different things. And sometimes they're all happening at the same time, so it can be tricky. Okay, 3 key learnings for today.
Number one, surveillance pricing is the application of algorithms that include your own personal online behavior to come up with a just for you price, which is based on a prediction of the highest price you are likely to pay. It's AI powered and really still in its early days. So before it becomes ubiquitous, it's important to understand what it is, what it can do, and take that potential into your purchasing consideration.
Number 2, regulation is possible and it's probably coming, but it's complicated and it will probably always lag potential uses. It'll probably focus on transparency, consent, and what personal information can be used for, rather than on surveillance pricing per se. The reality is that AI developments and the tasks to which marketers apply it are speeding ahead at a rate that regulators just can't match. So it's on each of us to take care.
Finally, you can do some things to protect yourself as much as possible to make sure that good purchasing habits that include the recognition of surveillance pricing, comparison. That's the key word to take away today. Just keep in mind that you aren't just comparing prices anymore, but your price with your future price, your past price. I don't know. It's all very confusing now. But practice good technology hygiene so you aren't unknowingly sharing too much information.
So that's us for today. So what do y'all think? Surveillance pricing, yes or no? And since that genie's probably already out of the bottle, are you prepared? If you'd like to share, why not drop us a line or 10 at notjustmoneypodcast@gmail.com.
Good talk.
You've been listening to Not Just Money with Doretta and Li. Click on the show's description for links to resources related to today's conversation. Our aim is to share sources that provide objective information that can help you make informed financial decisions. Please rate and review our show. If you'd like to get in touch with us, email us at notjustmoneypodcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to be featured on the show, you can send us your questions and comments by a written email, audio file, or video file. Please include your name and city. This show is produced and edited by Li, with original music by Leo Zhang cello and artwork by John Tu. Now for some legalese. Please note that the views expressed by our hosts and guests are theirs alone and should not be viewed as financial advice. This podcast is intended to be entertainment and educational in nature. Please seek additional professional support or information before acting on any podcast information. As always, good talk.